Hello and welcome to the TechBytes audiocast. My name's Tim and I'm from the TechBytes blogazine, and with me is Dr. Roy Shestowitz from the TechBytes website.
It's Friday night and I'm gonna get sauce. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. He tried to boss me and was outbossed. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. Underneath his creeper bridge, hoping goats will cross. Quoting Ashcroft and Tom Ridge, I fought the troll and the...
Right, hello and welcome to episode 35 of the TechBytes audiocast for the 19th of March 2011. It's myself, Tim, and Roy here today. There's an absence of Gordon, which we apologise about. And today's episode, we've decided to call it You Can't Please Some People. In order to find out why we've called it that, you'll have to wait till the discussion at the end of the show, which is going to be run a little bit differently this time round because we've got two tracks to play for you today. And our first track's going to separate the show into two pieces. So without further ado, we'll go over to Roy, who traditionally starts off the show. And Roy, I believe you've got a topic to start us off on.
Yeah, I've been going through lots of things recently, and I've been trying to catch up now that I kind of settled in a new place. And I've found lots of news that's very encouraging for Linux. The thing I found out today, remember ASUS used to kind of go into the mainstream by producing a sub-notebook or a netbook. At the time, it was a new concept, which ran Xandros, as far as I know, and then ran all kinds of other operating systems as well.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
I think they introduced this in 2007, and I say 2007, I think that's the first time they introduced the thing where it was mostly becoming very mainstream in 2008. And it came at a time when the One Laptop Per Child project was trying to gain a foothold. And Intel was desperate to derail the AMD efforts, and they were willing to throw some spare CPUs they had on some company to produce something that's going to compete with the OLPC, the One Laptop Per Child project. And that was ASUS at the time. And this created this kind of a market segment where the whole computer would cost you just as much as the whole operating system for Microsoft, which was a really, really, industry-changing type of event. And ever since then, Microsoft never managed to ensure that there is no entry-level, kind of very cheap version of Windows. I mean, the margins have fallen. But then there was the period of time when Microsoft was allegedly willing to give Windows XP away for $5 and even actually pay the companies to use Windows at some stage. And that's when ASUS basically decided to start to install Windows as well as an option. And eventually, at a later stage, only Windows was available on the E, or triple E, is how they branded the thing. And ASUS had an income drop of about 95% in one quarter, I think in 2009, and they never really truly managed to get the potential out of the advantage they had initially with the sub-notebooks. And now not many people even sell sub-notebooks, and lots of people talk about tablets instead. Now what happens now is ASUS was kind of coming back to Linux before, or at least offering this as an option, and now they go all the way back to either Android or to Chrome OS, which is of course based on Linux. And to me, that's very good news because it shows two things. It shows, first of all, they aren't quite so satisfied with the best operating system in the world, which is Windows 7. They aren't too excited about that. It doesn't actually scale too well. But the other thing, it shows them having to go back to Linux because even having tried to receive incentives from Microsoft, it just doesn't work with them. I mean, on a technical ground, they just do better with Linux. So that's very good news.
I mean, if we put aside operating systems for a second, I was reading a very interesting article recently in regards to Microsoft's future. And I know it's often said that Microsoft's doomed, or certainly in the past, but Microsoft is doomed, or Microsoft's going to collapse overnight. That's certainly not going to be the case, in my opinion. But the one thing we can say is that the market is now demanding cheaper and cheaper alternatives. They want cheaper hardware, they want cheaper solutions. And while this is happening, their margins will be reducing. And can Microsoft sustain itself, the size it is, on the market wanting cheaper alternatives? Microsoft has to make a profit to sustain itself. And as we all know, it's grown so enormous in size. Will it be able to manage itself under with the profits that it raises from the price that people are willing to pay? And that's what it's all about these days. You can have your operating system deployed onto millions of machines, but if people aren't willing to pay to upgrade it and to keep paying more money into you, then that could be the downfall of Microsoft, or certainly the downsizing of Microsoft. And it's something I've commented on a few times.
I'm not sure about absolute numbers, and I'm always very skeptical for all sorts of reasons. We have reasons to be skeptical because companies who fake numbers have always been quiet about it. And Microsoft, we do know Microsoft is borrowing money from the bank. That we do know for sure because the company admits doing that. And it's really mysterious. But the fact is, we have two factors here. One is the size of the market in general, and more people get computers, and we have computers in more countries and more segments and so on and so on. And the fact is that the revenue, the overall revenue of Microsoft is going down when it comes to Windows, and as far as I know also when it comes to Office, which usually kind of goes along with Windows. And you can say, it's because of counterfeiting, but the company can always try to prevent that if it wants to. It's just the question of whether it wants people to use illegal copies instead of using something like OpenOffice or LibreOffice or something like that. The second thing is the margins themselves are falling as well. So you have the per unit profit that they make out of a computer, the Windows tax or the Windows additional cost to a piece of hardware is declining, but also overall, despite the growth of the market, despite the increase of the size of the market, they still don't manage to sell as much as they did. They cancel lots of products, about 50, I've counted almost 60 so far, that they basically shut down or cancel. The latest one basically is going to be dead, is the Zune. And I'm sure lots of people have heard about it, and I know you wrote about it. And they had some more things that they kind of shut down, but I was sort of away and not on the internet when it happened. But it seems like they do realize the need to find a focus. They have to find their market. When it comes to Office and Windows, that's kind of a shrinking market too. People on their phones, they're not going to use an Office suite. They probably will use some Express edition of something, or they might use a web-based something. And when you're talking about web-based Office suites, you're already talking about a different type of market. So you kind of think about integration with email, so it can be something like Gmail and diaries and sharing of diaries, and it's a whole different curve for Microsoft to try and deal with. And they still try to find balance. And I always keep wondering, where do they still make more money? Where do they grow? Is it the Exchange server? Is it SharePoint? I mean, these are products you're talking about, something like $1 billion, and it's not really the major kind of market for them to sustain what they claim to be a business of about 60 billion per year.
Well, I mean, speaking about figures, I remember a few shows ago, I was talking about the perception of the 360 being the more popular console in the shops, and it was you that made a comment at the time, saying that we should be very skeptical about perception and etc. etc. Yeah. Which struck a chord with me recently because there's been some published figures in regards to the sales of the consoles, which shows that Microsoft, far from my observation of it being the more popular console, isn't. And it's selling, well, in the latest figures, it sold 2.2 million units less than the 360, which puts the 360 in third place in the battle of the current generation consoles. Yeah. So, whilst we have to be skeptical about any figure, I think it does show a point. I mean, I had a perception about the 360. I'm a PS3 user, but what we're told and what we observe doesn't always correlate to the reality. So,
are these numbers collected from the United States, or is it collected from all the shops, or is it the actual units shipped to the shop? And because you can always, you can have all three companies claim to be number one, and then you look closely, it turns out one of them talks about shipping, one of them talks about Japan, one of them talks about some company which is basically funded by Sony or funded by Nintendo to produce some numbers. And all of them claim to be number one, but then you can say, oh, hold on a second, they cannot be all number one. It's just they